See it.
Yep, Neighborhood Ambassador Training, Module 5.
Yay. Well, want to say welcome to everyone once again. I am so impressed that everyone in the group comes back every week. And we've been in so many courses here where you see people come in and then they're in for a little bit and they duck out. And, you know, their life happens, and I truly understand that. But to me, it says a lot for folks to want to go through this. We know that this is a long program, and we're asking for a lot of your time in this process. So we greatly appreciate everyone sticking around through the multiple weeks here. And I'll tell you, I want to say thanks to all of those folks who came out last week or who were able to participate here. It was great to meet the folks out in Bailey here, and then also the folks that Lisa had here in Monument. And so we could, you know, meet people in person for a change. And the sessions went well in both locations, and we're so glad that we waited a day for us here, for at least for Bailey, and then a couple of days here in Monument. It was definitely needed, and it made the sessions much more enjoyable to do. And so I want to thank again the Carneses and Susan Mahan and Bailey. It was a fantastic day, I thought, here, and a great interaction here with us along the way. And I think we all got value out of it. And we get to see two great perspectives here in Bailey, and it worked out really well, I think, for everyone's learning. And then for Lisa's sessions, I understand it went equally as well, and we got great feedback and inputs from both the folks that attended, and also Matthew from Woodmore provided great inputs as well. The Julianne Corm's not here. She provided some good inputs for us there in Bailey here. So we really appreciate all the contributions folks are providing along the way and sharing your knowledge. We said at the beginning, we don't know it all, and we recognize our shortfalls in knowledge, and we certainly recognize that there are folks out in the group and in the world that know a lot more than us here. So our function is to bring it all together and be the glue between all the different pieces of expertise out there to go along the way. So for today's session here, our module 5 is to connect with fire and forestry professionals and discuss neighborhood hazards here. As a reminder, I want to start off with a couple of program notes here. We started initially with the thought of having a Firewise Preparedness Day on May the 1st, and we are canceling that session so that we can support the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Department's preparedness event on the 15th. There's going to be a lot of repeat information from that particular session here. So,
Andre?
Yes.
Can you let Julian?
Oh, sorry. 1 second, please. Oh, yeah, there are 3 people. It's a good thing I put your phone number in the email. Contact Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, for the folks just coming in, oh, gotta click the button all the way and let Cherise in. There we go. We haven't gone very far here. We're just talking about a couple of program notes. We will not be conducting the Firewise Preparedness Day at our church.
Fire in this second period. Sanheim closes. Swayman, a save.
It's a home run. It's baseball season. And then on, so we're going to support the local fire department's Preparedness Day on the 15th. And so there'll be plenty of preparedness days, and we were kind of juggling around what to do here, but Jamie's supporting us here, so we're going to support him on his day on the 15th, and I think it'll be a great event. So the May the 1st right now is canceled. We're looking at some other things here, so we may have another event that shifts into that day, but more to follow with that. We have a lot of things that are in flux right now, so we ask your patience with that. Okay, so here's the overview for today's session here. We're going to start off with the Fire and Forestry Professionals Forum, and then move into the neighborhood fire assessment, and then talk about some of the tools that are out there to do those assessments here, and then open it up for questions, and we'll talk about the homework once again, because that's one of our favorites also, being the homework. Here, so with the session, oops, I'm sorry, I'm moving things around here. With the for today's session with the fire and forestry professionals, we're going to have them basically talk about a little background about their offices, and then provide information on their duties and responsibilities, and then talk about their capabilities and what they can bring towards the neighborhoods, and to allow the neighborhoods to understand what resources they have available, and we want this forum to be a thought-provoking consideration for you to reach out and meet with yours. Initially, we wanted to have the folks from their respective districts come in, but since we've had so many neighborhoods come in, we would be in this session forever here. So, and that's not our intent. We know that we're only going for an hour and a half here each night or so. So we want to make sure we have things condensed, but eventually we would like for you, and welcome, I recommend that you meet with your fire and forestry professionals going forward. So with that, we'll start off with our first presenter, and this, excuse me, is Jamie Baumgartner, and he's with the Tri-Lakes Monument Fire Protection District. He's the division chief and fire marshal in that area. With that, over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Andre. I appreciate the welcome and introduction, and I appreciate you canceling your event to support me on May 15th. I'll do my best to make sure it's worthwhile for everyone that wants to attend, and I'll make sure Lisa lets you know what's going on with that event as well, in case you want to join us on May 15th here in Monument. So thanks. As Andre said, I am Jamie Baumgartner. I'm the fire marshal and division chief of fire prevention community risk here in Monument. And obviously my job, the largest part of that is I work for the fire chief. I kind of make that designation. Some people get that confused. The fire chief's actually in charge of the district, and then I work for him in the prevention aspect of our organization. So it's my job to look out for all the things that we can prevent fires from starting or take steps, which is what we're talking about here today and tonight. And this actual whole program is community risk reduction and removing that wildfire risk from the homes and the neighborhoods that we can. So, but yeah, thank you for that, Andre. If you want to go into the first slide, I'll start talking from there. Much like many of your fire districts that cover you, we here at Tri-Lakes Monument, we cover about 52 square miles here in northern El Paso County. It includes the town of Monument and in the unincorporated areas of El Paso County around the town of Monument. The exception to that is some people think Palmer Lake. Palmer Lake has their own fire department as well. And so essentially we have everything from the County Line Road, which is I-25 and the 163 exit, and you take a square almost and go all the way to almost Palmer Lake, slip around Palmer Lake, go to the National Forest, and then we go all the way east to Black Forest Road essentially, and then south to Baptist Road. So it's a big triangle, or a big square. We'll have a picture on the next page of maps, you can see it, but that's kind of what we cover. We have 3 fire stations that are fully staffed. We have 15 personnel on each shift. We do not have any volunteers. That's a kind of an unusual thing here in Colorado, but we don't have any volunteer firefighters that help us staff our stations. It's all career personnel. We also provide an ambulance service with that. So we have paramedics at each one of our stations, and then 2 of our stations have a ALS paramedic ambulance at each station. And in 2020, we ran just a little over 2,500 calls, which was actually down for us from 2019. We were over 3,000 in 2019. So we can all understand COVID. That's sometimes what people don't realize is our COVID call volume actually went down by about 500 calls. Plus we had a huge blizzard in 2019 that jumped our calls up by 150 in a day. So trade those 2 off, and that's about where we're at. With 2020 was 2,500 calls. And our elevation here in Monument's about 7,100 feet. Obviously we service areas a little under that and then a little over that, but just we kind of say on average we're at about 7,100 feet above sea level, which obviously puts us right in that prime area, I would say, is what we call it for wildfires, because we do in Monument get the Palmer Divide effect of the snowstorms, which I understand you guys are getting some snow there. You'll have to forgive me, but obviously I'm not in my office here in uniform. I'm actually on vacation in North Carolina at the Outer Banks. So I'm enjoying some sun and fishing, and it was actually 70 degrees today, Andre. So just for you folks back there in Colorado, it was really nice today. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. But if you would go ahead and go to the next slide, Andre. There's a picture of the map that I was telling you about, and you can kind of see it's kind of hard, but we kind of just go right across the top border there. And if you look at the very top, it says Larkspur Fire, Franktown Fire. We border those Douglas County agencies on the top up there. Over to the far left of the map or your screen, you're going to see Palmer Lake. And then everything except for that, we go right down to Baptist Road and out to Black Forest. So that's kind of the big map that we cover. The interesting thing I want to point out to folks that are from the Monument, El Paso County area is all the forest land that we cover east of I-25 includes Woodmore and Whistler Ranch and a bunch of those out through there, Arrowwood and all those. That is all the Black Forest. And that's a portion of the Black Forest that didn't burn with the Black Forest fire. So one of the things when I tell folks that is, hey, you know, there is still a Black Forest here, and it wraps all the way back up in here around into Monument. So we do need to make sure we take steps to secure that. As you can see, it's very linear across there. Our fire stations, it's kind of hard to see, but we have Station 1's just west of I-25. Andre's got his cursor over there. And then we've got our Station 3, which is just east of I-25 right there. And then our Station 2 is way out east out there at Roller Coaster and Highway 105. So our stations really go kind of in a linear fashion across the middle of our district. And we know we need to work on that. So that's going to be moving forward. We're going to probably have something down south there too. So along the I-25 corridor around Baptist Road. So more to come on that, but that's kind of our district. And then the interesting part of that is the entire west side of our district, west of I-25, with the exception of Palmer Lake, where I talked about, we completely border the National Forest, the Pike National Forest on the west side, and then the south side down there, we border the United States Air Force Academy. So we have a forestry boundary all along the western side of our border, or with that forest or with the Air Force Academy. So wildfire is obviously a huge issue that we deal with here in Monument, and we're doing a risk assessment as part of a potential accreditation process for our district. And we all recognize the fact that wildfire is one of our largest risks that we have here in Monument. So that's one of the things we do take seriously for sure. Next slide, please. Kind of back to what I talked about, I jumped a little ahead. We do obviously provide fire suppression. A lot of people ask what fire suppression means. Well, that means that we respond to all sorts of fires, whether they're car fires, vehicle fires, structure fires, wildfires, any type of fire event. That's what we're there for, 911. Emergency medical, ALS paramedics. We have 2 ambulances, as I said before. We have a 3rd one if we need it. Plus we have paramedics on most all of our rigs that are responding to your 911 calls. So that's one of the things that we do. And then the other thing is, you know, the area I deal with, which is community risk reduction. We provide home assessments. So you guys learned about those last week. We do those as a fire protection district as well. We come out and talk with the homeowners. And the way I like to view it is, it's a conversation between a firefighter and the homeowners. We walk around your property and we talk about what we see your property as a firefighter. That's going to be different than my partner, Dave Root, that you're going to hear from later. And it's probably going to be a little different than what Lisa and Andre tell you, or some of the other folks that tell you. And it's a nice conversation to be had, because I'm going to look at things a little different than they're going to look at things. But at the end of the day, we're all going to try to boil back down to those simple steps that you as a homeowner can take or as an activist can take to get your homeowners association on board with those. Then we do have a community chipping program here in Monument. We were extremely fortunate. We applied for a grant several years ago, and the State Forest Service awarded us the grant to buy a chipper and a vehicle to pull the chipper with. It was a 50-50 grant. So we do have a chipper or a chipping program here in Monument. It's been going now for 2 years and really strong this third year coming forward. And so we do that as well. We work with homeowners associations as opposed to individual homeowners right now in that chipping program. And folks like yourselves that are active in your homeowners association, organize chipping days. We'll bring our chipper out, and then we work with you to go around as to many homes as we can in that one-day event and chip the slash piles that they've drug out to the road, and we get rid of those. So that's a program we offer. We also offer public education, just like I'm doing with you folks here tonight. We offer the opportunity to talk about our district, what we try to do, what our goals and our missions are for the district. Which obviously number one is to protect our citizens. And the one thing, and then the other thing with that is we have various other community education programs, whether it's 4th of July parades, whether it's school programs in October. We do all of those things to help better educate our community on various events. It can be from senior safety, cooking safety, fall prevention safety, swimming safety. We don't have as much of that. But we have all those types of events that we do work with and try to educate our communities on and make sure that they have the latest and the greatest information that we can put in their hands to make sure we reduce that risk to our citizens and our community as well. And then the other thing is in there that a lot of people don't realize, you'll hear me talk about this a little bit later. Any of those steps that I can take as the community risk reduction division or the prevention division that I have, it also prevents our firefighters and our staff from having to being put in harm's way to respond to emergencies. So it kind of all boils down back into the same pot. We want to keep you safe and we want to keep our staff safe as well. So that's one of the things that we do as a district. Next slide, Andre. A lot of people in Monument before 2012 only knew about the one large fire, which was called the Hayman Fire. Many of you live here may know about the Hayman Fire. Many of you may not know about the Hayman Fire. Hayman Fire was one of the first eye openers for us here in the state of Colorado about a large wildfire, the potential that a large wildfire can cause here. I wasn't here in 2002 when the Hayman Fire burned. I certainly heard all the stories about the Hayman Fire burning, but I can tell you I was here for the 2012 Waldo Canyon Fire and the 2013 Black Forest Fire. This picture, and I put this picture specifically in this presentation for a reason. This picture is taken from the Walgreens in Monument on the day that the Black Forest Fire experienced its blowdown, as the way, or some of us have called it, where it blew down Stanley Canyon and into the city of Colorado Springs. So back down in there that you see in the far side of that picture covers the Air Force Academy, and then that goes down into Stanley Canyon and the western side of I-25 there at Woodman Road. That was the view from Monument as soon as this event started taking place. That woke a lot of people up in many aspects. Unfortunately, the city of Colorado Springs, it was a very rude awakening to most of those folks. But to us in the Monument area up here, it was a very quick but not as rude awakening for us that, hey, this is a threat and this does happen to us and it does happen in our community. We didn't have a chance to forget that, because very quickly, less than 365 days on its heels in 2013, the Black Forest Fire started just south of us again in Monument, and it continued to burn east, and then it started wrapping its way back to the northwest, which was coming back toward Monument. We were fortunate we were able to stop that fire at Highway 83 and Hodgen Road, keep it south of Hodgen Road at that 83 intersection. And then when it did cross Hodgen Road, we were able to suppress it before it got up to county line. The Black Forest Fire, again, only cemented more for our folks in the Monument area. Hey, this is a threat that we experience, and this is something we need to take serious. The other thing I wanted to note is those three fires that you see up there on that screen, the Hayman, the Waldo Canyon, and the Black Forest, those are the fires that you hear about. My last bullet down there says numerous other smaller fires. Those are the fires that you don't hear about. And there's two reasons I bring that up. One is you don't hear about those fires. So there are more fires occurring in our area than we probably hear about. And then the other thing with that is we like to also view it as those fires were smaller and we were able to extinguish them. And perhaps those fires remain smaller from the work that you folks put in as citizens, working with us to partner together to make this partnership so we can mitigate and make it safer for all of us, and especially reducing fuels is the way to go. So that's kind of why I put that bullet point in there, is because there are numerous other fires. If you follow us on social media, you'll hear about the fires that start in the Pike Forest. We'll talk about it was a quarter acre, it was a single tree strike, etc. Those are wildfires, and those fires did start, and they did burn some portion of the structures, or some portion of the forest. I'm sorry. So anyway, that's kind of why I wanted to put that last bullet in there, and we can move on to the next slide there, Andre. What do we need you to do? So this is me talking to you as Tri-Lakes Monument Fire, but I think I speak for any of the fire departments that you live within those areas, particularly here in Colorado. The first thing is preparation is critical. We need you to take preparation steps to be ready for a fire way before the fire even starts. Preparedness, same thing. Preparedness is essential. We need you to take steps to make sure you're prepared, your property's prepared, your family's prepared, you have a place to meet if you need to leave home and meet somewhere if you're both not home, if husband and wife aren't home, kids aren't home, parents live in the area, kids live out of the area. What's your plan as to how you're going to be able to take those steps if and when you need to evacuate? Because make no mistake, it's going to happen at some point in time. You just need to have a plan and be prepared on how you're going to execute it. The other thing is safety. If nothing else, the Water Canyon Fire and the Black Forest Fire hopefully demonstrated to the majority of the residents that live in the Tri-Lakes District. 2012, the West Side residents were heavily affected. 2013, the East Side residents were heavily affected. It hopefully emphasized the fact of you need those preparation and those preparedness steps. You also need to be able to function and do that safely. Your safety and our firefighter safety is paramount above everything else, period. End of the day, that's what we want to ensure, your safety and the safety of our firefighters. If we can accomplish those two goals and then get in there and help save structures, then we've all won at that point in time. But your safety and our firefighter safety is paramount to those. I would be completely remiss if I didn't bring it up here, but please, under the safety column, I emphasize this again, make sure that you're signed up for your local emergency notification program. Here in El Paso County, we have what's called El Paso Teller 911. They have a great program that we use to notify folks in those situations. But whatever county you're in, make sure your landlines and your cell phone lines are all signed up to receive that message. I just can't emphasize that enough. I know Lisa and Andre know this, but in El Paso County, the numbers were extremely dismal of how many people were registered to receive that notification. Thanks, Lisa. I saw she just posted that in the chat, how you can sign up if you're in El Paso and Teller County. Please, please, please sign up for that system. I'm going to mess it up, but I want to say there was less than like 40% or 30% of the folks in El Paso, Teller County were signed up to receive those notifications. That's a very dismal number of folks that are going to receive notifications. I hope you're one of those, and if you're not, let's make sure we get them all signed up. And then kind of my last bullet on this slide is together we can accomplish this before there's smoke in the air. We're certainly willing to help do as much as we can do, but the homeowners and the folks that are just like yourself sitting here tonight, letting me talk with you, you're the ones that make this happen. Anything we can do at Tri-Lakes Monument Fire, along with Tri-Lakes, Methodist Church, my partner Dave Root from the Colorado State Forest Service, we're here to help and partner with you, but we have to do it together, and we have to do this well before there's smoke in the air. Once there's smoke in the air, most of the bets are off. It's not time for me to try to run my chipper to your neighborhood. It's not probably a good time for you to try to get all the slash drug out to your street. We needed to have done that before there's smoke in the air and before the fire starts. Next slide, I think, Andre.
That's the last one.
That's it? Okay. And so some folks had asked, the questions are probably going to come up about like the chipper program. How do you do that? You can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Andre or Lisa. They'll direct you on how to get in touch with me. But again, we like to work with your homeowners association. We just don't have the staffing right now that we can work with the individual homeowners on a lot by lot basis. We like to work with the communities at this point in time, and we'll bring the chipper in. We ask you to partner with us. You're going to need to create the labor to cut the material, drag the material to the street side, and then create the chains as you see here in this picture on the left. That's the two folks up by the chipper work for our district, and then that's rest. Most of them are volunteers dragging the slash from the street side. You help your neighbor helps you is the way this happens. And it creates a human chain. You drag it up to our staff, and our staff will feed it in the chipper. You don't even have to get close to the chipper if you're afraid of the chipper. Please, just, it's working together to accomplish what we need to accomplish. I think that's kind of what I had intended to present to the group tonight. I will pause here. I think Andre's going to take over, but I'll be here through Dave's presentation as well.
Jamie, we do have a question that's related to the chipping program, and the question comes from Julie Kalish. And do the residents pay a fee for the home assessments and chipping program?
That is a great question, Andre, and thank you for submitting that question. No, on both parts. The residents do not pay for the home assessment. That's part of my job, as the fire district will pay, or they pay me. That's what I do, is I come out to do the home assessments for you. And then the community chipping program, there is no fee for that. We asked your fee be your volunteer in-kind work, where you're out there working alongside our staff on the day of the chipping program. And obviously you have to do your pruning and thinning and fuel mitigation work before we bring the chipper out. So that's kind of your pay-in portion, plus being there to support our staff on the day of the event. So we do not ask for money though. That's just volunteer in-kind matches.
Thank you, Jamie, for that. I'd like to open it up to the group. Is there anyone who has a question? Take yourself off mute and ask your question directly. Okay, it's your shot, folks. Ask all the questions you want. Don't be shy. Okay, question from Ed. Can we feed firefighters who run the chipper?
Absolutely. You can feed the firefighters who run the chipper for you. They would appreciate that, I'm sure. We'll just work that into the schedule when they're visiting with your neighborhoods. But yes, you can feed the firefighters, and they're like bears. They will eat it, but they won't necessarily come back every time. But yes, they would appreciate it.
Awesome. It's a question from John Putt. Does Tri-Lakes do any evacuation training with neighborhood groups?
We as Tri-Lakes Fire don't do evacuation training for groups. I would have to refer to my partners at Pikes Peak Regional OEM. They're probably better experts at that than I am. One of the things a lot of folks may in El Paso County not understand is when it comes to evacuation, that's a law enforcement driven type event. We help organize, or we help not organize, but we help determine when it needs to occur. But law enforcement takes that over. So we don't actually provide the evacuation training, but we're more than willing to help however we could. But Pikes Peak Regional OEM is probably the best person to reach out to for that.
Yeah, Jamie, and if I recall, before the COVID situation came on, we were on track to do an evacuation exercise in our area, and that was going to include both the citizens and the professionals, correct?
That is correct. We were going to do a drill for basically the western side of I-25, kind of pretty much south of downtown Monument west to the mountains, and then north to county line. But I'm pretty sure that's been put on hold, and that's not going to happen. I'm not sure it's even going to happen here in 2021, but we're hoping to get that back on the books and get folks used to evacuating like that, or training or practicing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And so it's good for both the citizens, the residents, and the professionals as well, so they can see the volume of traffic and the concerns that come about that happen during that. So I have another question from Julie. And when do you think you'll have a schedule for this spring summer chipping program?
That's another great question. We actually have put out to the residents to get us to the HOAs that we've been working with to get us their dates. Their dates are back to us, and I'm working with my staff right now to make sure that we can meet each one of those dates that have been submitted. And I'm hoping as soon as I return from vacation to be able to finalize all those dates with each individual homeowners association that's already submitted dates to me. We already have, I'm pulling from memory right now, I want to say 12 dates already reserved, and we're just making sure we can fulfill all of those dates right now.
Cool. Hopefully one is May 22nd for a certain group that likes to wear orange shirts.
It
We
is.
have a question from Lucy Bauer. This is, do you have to get grants to pay for the programs, or do you have enough funding in your department for it all?
That's a really good question. A lot of folks don't know. Currently today, the fire district stance is the grants provided us the equipment, 50% cost of the equipment. We match that 50%, so we paid for the other 50% out of district funds, and we're paying our district staff, currently our staff overtime to come in and do the chipping event, so the fire district supports this program. And then we're looking for the future as to what's the future of the program. And that may include that we would bring on some seasonal staff to staff the chipping program on a more continuous basis than just weekends. So that's one of the things we're moving in the direction now. We do have a new fire chief. He strongly supports the program. I really appreciate working with Chief Kovacs in this, and Chief Kovacs joined us from Orange County, California, and they have a huge urban interface program there as well. And I think you'll see lots of positive changes coming out of this relationship now for Tri-Lakes and Monument, particularly in this area.
Yeah, Jamie, I think what you did to establish that chipping program here is a good model. You know, there are other districts that have it as well, but the path that you took to get the grant for it, I think is something that we should try to help to promote for those other districts that don't have a chipping program currently. And that's one area that I think I see going forward that we can help maybe get some of our political leaders to help with too, and provide the funding for those grant programs so that we can get, you know, programs like this where we can get energy with folks to do the stuff that they have, or, you know, get rid of the slash that they have at their level instead of worrying about the, you know, trying to take care of the big trees in the forest. We have plenty to work with 10 feet and below here. And I think your program is fantastic. We're so excited to have you have it fully in place now. We have one more question from Ed. And when we create, when we create and publish community evacuation plans and maps, should we clear them with law enforcement or firefighters first?
That's a great question. Absolutely, Ed. I think you would want to run those by certainly your firefighters, but most importantly, the law enforcement agencies. Again, I'm not going to just say it's law enforcement, but I would say Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management. They actually have law enforcement personnel that work for them. Dave Husted is one of those folks. He's a police officer working in OEM. And let's run that through that program, or let's run that by them and give them input as we make those evacuation maps, so we're all aware of what that's going to be. But yes, absolutely, we would want to do that.
Okay, one more question from Craig. How wide should the cut branches be to go through the chipper?
You know, I don't know that I've ever had the question of how wide they should be. I have had them diameter of the trunk, you know, so down at the base of the limb. We can go up to at least 12 inches, I think, on our chipper, and I think it might go as high as 16, but I don't remember that off the top of my head, unfortunately, right now. But there's not necessarily a width as far as, like, if you think of all the branches and the leaves that come off of it, but the diameter of the tree itself, 12 to 16 inches is as large as we can chip with our chipper. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, Craig, we'll talk a little bit about that too when we come to the chipping day techniques here. And Lisa has a term called gift wrapping, and how we set the branches, but basically you keep all the branches with the cut in one direction, and then you feed the cut in, and then so everything else will feed in there. And we'll talk a little bit more about branches that come out to 90 degrees and those types of things in that particular session. So great questions, folks. Thank you. Any more for Jamie before we move on? Okay, well, thank you, Jamie. Really appreciate your time and your willingness to join us on vacation here.
Very glad to be here.
Yeah, and so we've had a great partnership with Jamie the entire time, and I think it just gets stronger every year. So greatly appreciate you being with us today here and look forward to working with you going forward. Our next presenter today is Dave Root, and he's a forester with the Colorado State Forest Service, and I'll hand it over to you, Dave. Hey, Dave, you're on mute right now. I have that same problem.
You know, the muted part might have been the best part of the presentation, but we'll see. Sorry about that. Yeah, who we are, the Colorado State Forest Service. I would like to, if I could, get hold of the fellow who thought that it was a good idea to call us a Forest Service back in the dawn of time when we were established, because everyone confuses us with the U.S. Forest Service, the National Forest people. That's not who we are. We actually don't even own any land. But who we are the Extension and Outreach Division of the Warner College of Forestry and Natural Resources at Colorado State University. And basically, we are the university's extension service for forestry. So if you want to know how to bake a cake or grow your garden, you call the CSU extension. If you want to know how to manage your forest, you call us. We have, I should know this number, but I don't. We have 15 or 20 field offices located throughout the state, and each field office serves probably 1 or 2 or 3 counties. By the way, here in the first slide is our website, and I think Andre has, he'll probably show it to you later, an example of some of the literature and the information sheets that you can get from our website. Another thing you can get there that you might be interested in if you don't already have a community wildfire protection plan and you want to know what those things tend to look like, every community wildfire protection plan, or CWPP, that has been written in the state of Colorado is actually on our website, and you can look at anybody's that you might want to use for an example or just to give you an idea of what those are and what they're all about. And can we go to the next slide? I'm going to try to keep this very short tonight, so hopefully we'll also have a lot of time for questions. What we do, we aren't a regulatory agency. That we don't enforce any laws, rules, or regulations. We are strictly established to give you technical assistance and information. So, you know, we cannot really even enter a person's property without their asking us to come out first. And we don't force anybody to do defensible space or forest management. It's entirely through the landowner's own choice. But what we can do is work with individuals and communities to help them achieve their forest management goals, which include wildfire mitigation, but also forest health, tree planting, windbreaks, things like that. What we're going to talk mostly about is wildfire, because that's kind of my job here in the Woodland Park Field Office. And can we go to the next slide? I talked about, we have many field offices throughout the state. And again, if you go to our website, you can find whichever field office serves your locale. ours serves El Paso, Teller, and most of Park County. And I need to say this because I know there's a lot of you who are in the Bailey Platte Canyon area. Somewhere from the top of Kenosha Pass, kind of going northeast to southeast, is a nebulous line that none of us really know exactly where it is. But that northeastern portion of Park County that is in the Platte Canyon is actually served from our Golden office. And it gets very confusing sometimes, but even if you call our office in Woodland Park, we will get you to the right place. So, you know, Platte Canyon, probably most of the people who are on the call tonight have worked with our office and know where it is and know who to call. But if you call any of our offices, we'll figure out how to get you to the right place. And the map I have there on the screen is from the Colorado Forest Atlas, which is also on our website if you have a mind to look at GIS programs. And it's really a kind of an atlas, a GIS program that you can compare wildfire hazard everywhere across the state, but it has many pages and many maps, including fire intensity, likelihood of burning, flame length, housing density, which is kind of what this map is. But our WUI, which stands for Wildland Urban Interface, throughout the three counties, we have quite a bit. I mean, even to the point that we have designated WUI, and I should explain that term. If there are high density housing developments adjacent to wildland fires, that's the Wildland Urban Interface. You know, even out in the far reaches of South Park, where you would think they have only grass and no trees, we have little spots, little neighborhoods of wildland urban interface communities. If you notice, the big purple spot is the city of Colorado Springs, which includes about 400,000, give or take, people. And thank God that the city of Colorado Springs has a fire department who service most of those people. So I'm not run too ragged trying to service the entire city of Colorado Springs. Obviously, we concentrate on the rural areas outside of the big city. And, you know, our big area of wildland urban interface is kind of right smack dab up against the Front Range, both north and south of Colorado Springs. And it would be interesting to know how many people that really incorporates. But it's a big number. And thank heavens that I have people like our fire districts and Andre and Lisa and community leaders in Firewise communities who are there to help me out. If it weren't for the partnerships, I would be pretty much buried under a pile of work. And can we kind of flip up to the next slide? Thank you. So, you know, if I were to describe my job, really, I don't unfortunately spend a whole lot of time going out and meeting individual landowners, although I do that and I like to do that. So call me if you need help or advice. But I think really most of what I do is I kind of supply the ammunition to the Firewise resident leaders or the community spark plugs or people like Andre and Lisa I give them the facts that they can use to go meet with communities and homeowners, and I give them the ammunition that they use to persuade those groups that they need to take a look at their problem and start working together to address it. So, I give you guys the ammo and you fire it. And can we go to the next slide? Speaking of communities and community spark plugs and community volunteers and all the people who are really going out there helping me effectively do my job, we like to work with really anyone, but the most efficient way to do it is through a community organization or a volunteer organization. And towards that end, in our field office, we actually have 41 Firewise communities within the 3 counties. And that does not include probably about an equal number of Firewise communities within the city of Colorado Springs that are, again, administered through the Colorado Springs Fire Department Fire Marshal's office. We have 47 community wildfire protection plans, and those actually service communities from all 3 of the counties. Actually have a county level plan. It goes down to, I think the smallest one I've ever done was 6 houses at the end of a cul-de-sac. And, if you're interested in these things, community does not mean that you have to have an organized homeowners association or some legal entity that commissions the plan. It can simply be a group of concerned neighbors who want to work together. For example, I don't know if anybody from Colorado Estates is on the workshop tonight, but Colorado Estates is an area of homes and properties in Jamie's district that really, it's not an HOA or even one unique subdivision. One of the community spark plugs just got together and rounded up the neighbors and convinced them to work together, and that kind of nebulous neighborhood, we drew a boundary around a bunch of properties. The map here is the example, and they're working together with Jamie and the community and actually developing their own community wildfire protection plan. The map here is actually probably one of the most important things that you would get either from a Firewise assessment or a community wildfire protection plan. But that is the fire hazard map for their community. And that map, I actually sat down and drew that. It's not something that I got off the Colorado Forest Atlas website, although I did use the information as input. But I actually sat down at my desk and drew that map, and then I go out to the community and kind of ground truth it. And I think probably that's one of the most important things in a Firewise assessment or a community wildfire protection plan is that map that graphically illustrates the observed fire hazard in your community and where the priorities ought to be. And from there, you get to the portion where you create a plan to address the fire hazards in the community. One of the things we also do that is one of our programs is I spend a lot of my time administering various cost share grants. Some of you may have heard the names State Fire Assistance, Furworm. Those are a couple grant programs that we have that they vary sometimes depending on the pot of money, but usually they will cost share your projects at a rate of reimburse the landowner 50% of the cost of doing the work on their property, whether that's defensible space or fuel breaks or whatever. And I don't think I'm kind of giving anybody unfair advance notice, but tomorrow morning we will officially be announcing that we're accepting applications for the forest restoration and fire mitigation. Let me get this acronym straight. Forest restoration and wildfire mitigation grants, which go by the acronym of FIRWORM. But the state legislature just recently added $6 million to that program. And now we had some previous grants that were awaiting funding from the first go around that we had from this year. But we now have probably about $4.5 to $5 million extra dollars in that program. Those applications are going to be announced tomorrow morning. And we have never had this level of money in that program before. And should you be interested in cost share for one of your fire mitigation projects, I would highly recommend that you apply for it for this go round, because we may never have that level of money in it again. So your odds of having a successful and funded project are probably as good as they're ever going to get. And if you're interested, contact whichever field office serves your area and talk to the forester to get the application information and instructions. It will probably be on the website sometime tomorrow, but you will need to work with your local field office and your forester to fill out the grant and provide the information. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but I do want to say if you have something in mind, the way grants compete is the bigger your project and the larger landscape level effect that you can show will give your grant a better chance of being funded. So if you have a project and there is another neighborhood or other people in your area who also have one, your odds of success are going to be vastly increased if you actually work together and do one large application that covers maybe several neighborhoods. Anyway, I got off on a tangent, so let's go to the next slide. And, where do we go in the future? I think in the past, as I mentioned, we have a whole lot of Firewise communities and a whole lot of communities that are working together with one another within their community. And that is truly the most effective way to address wildfire hazard. But now that I have 41 Firewise communities I'm working with, I think the next step beyond that is we need to put more effort into having our communities work in concert with one another. Grants are one area that can certainly benefit from communities cooperating with other communities, but our fire hazard is regional. It's bigger than any one community, as Jamie pointed out. So what I would really like to see in the future is some communities working through the region. And one of the big hurdles that we've crossed just recently here locally towards that goal is Teller County has established its countywide regional wildfire council. That's kind of a big step for us because it's the first even countywide wildfire council that we have in this area. In fact, it's so new, we're still trying to work on developing what the structure is and kind of what the bylaws and the rules will be. But that is a great and tremendous step forward for us. El Paso County, if you're familiar with it, the Northern El Paso Community Organization, or NEPCO, which is kind of an umbrella association of homeowners associations in the kind of northeast area of El Paso County. About a year ago, they took the move to actually establish a wildfire mitigation committee. Again, that's a big thing that people are starting to think about, not just their own neighborhoods, but the entire region. And if anybody's getting started just within your community, by all means, that's your first priority. But also begin to think of, your neighbors, not necessarily those that are directly adjacent, but even those that are just in the same area. Get together with them and start working as a group. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. And another little soapbox in closing that I like to jump on, when you're developing a plan or working with your community or other communities, and you're trying to persuade people to come out and join you, I think one of the most important things that we need to do that we haven't done frequently in the past, but certainly talk about the hazard. We can't avoid that, but we need to talk about successes, not failures. So if you're out trying to sell the idea of fire mitigation, talk more about the homes that didn't burn than the ones that did. I think that persuades people a great deal more rather than gloom and doom. So that pretty much covers what I had to say. If there are any questions or whatnot, there's my contact information if you need to get hold of me or hold of one of our district offices. But any questions, let's go ahead and have a question and answer session.
You're muted, Andre.
Yeah, I just noticed that too. Thank you. First question comes from Smita. Could you share the link to the application packet? And Lisa, is that the one that you have there that you posted?
That's the link to our website. And
okay.
I'm not sure that the package has gone up on the website, but if you go to the main web page, when Diana up at our state office gets that material posted, there will surely be a link to that on our main web page. So I'd go to that, csfs.colostate.edu.
And Dave, when do you think the packets will be due? What is the due date for the application?
Oh, you would ask me that, and it's in my notes. It is due, and it will also be on the web page. They are due to your local field office on May 19th. So as is typical with grants, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do it and get it back to us. So yeah, work closely with your local forester.
Hey, Dave, this is Suzanne Adams at Cripple Creek Mountain Estates. As you know, we're working on our CWPP. Does that have to be completed in order to apply for this forest restoration and wildfire mitigation grants?
Not at all. You'll get some points if you can show the scientific, which would be the CWPP basis for your project. And in cases like yours, I kind of weasel word it. I say the first draft of the CWPP identifies, these as your highest priorities. And, sometimes the reviewers kind of make a snarky comment or two, but they don't reject your application. Also, the Teller County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, it can also be a source of validating that project. And also simply say that the project was recommended after an evaluation of the community by the Colorado State Forest Service. And I know time's short and I don't want to take up too much time, but I know you have sent me an email that I haven't got around to answering yet, but I did take a quick trip through the community just on my way back to the office. So I can probably legitimately give you some advice about developing a project. And so contact me here in the next week or so and we'll get started on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
The next question comes from Julie, and this is a general question to the group. And I think she's looking for folks in the monument area primarily. She's asking, does anyone want a team for a grant with the Ridge at Fox Run off Baptist Road to do some tree thinning throughout the neighborhood and also ensure Baptist Road trees get thinned out since it's an evacuation route? So we're coming to a point here that we need to talk about sort of what Dave was kind of hitting at in his previous slide, and that communities working with one another here to go forward here. And I'll try to see if I can get at least some collaborative forum where we can start sharing information with folks, or having folks communicate with each other here. There are different forums I know here, but for our purposes immediately here to have this group to be able to communicate with each other. So if you do, and please contact me. I'm a little reluctant to give everybody's email out here because you've shared that with me, but not necessarily shared it with the group. But if you tell me that you're interested in Julie's idea, then I will connect you with her, and then you guys can start communicating after that. We have a question from Ed for Dave. Which neighborhood or urban interface area scares you the most?
Ooh.
Please don't say Arrowwood 3.
Yeah, the one where the fire's burning.
Well,
No, what probably scares me the most is that kind of Ute Pass corridor between Manitou and Woodland Park, that narrow V-shaped canyon that is so horribly overgrown with sick, diseased trees. But just because that scares me the most doesn't mean some of the other ones aren't pretty scary as well and need to do the work. So if your community kind of strikes you as maybe a little bit scary, that's probably because it is. And by all means, give me, your fire department, anybody a call about getting started to work and addressing that hazard, making your neighborhood safer.
Okay. Julie also had a follow-on question, which I think Matthew has answered since he is on the NEPCO committee. But the question was, we heard that NEPCO received a grant for wildfire mitigation, but turned it down due to concerns over liability. Will neighborhoods have to worry about liability? And Matthew's answer was correct. The NEPCO board voted to turn down the grant due to insurance issues and liability. They could not absorb additional insurance costs due to perceived increase in risk. Happy to connect offline and speak a bit more about it. It is very complex.
Yeah, if you had 2 or 3 hours, I would tell you the sad, convoluted story of that particular grant. But that money has not gone away. After originally it was a grant to Black Forest Together, which disbanded about 2 days before we were told they got the grant. We tried to give that to NEPCO, and unfortunately, as soon as their insurance company heard about it, I think they tripled their insurance rates for, don't ask me what they were thinking, but there's no liability incurred because you gave someone a grant to mitigate their fire hazard. But in the world we live in, lawyers and insurance companies can screw things up. So that money's not gone away. Finally, we actually made it a grant to our office, which is something we don't like to do because then that has the appearance our office is handing out grant money to our buddies. I've not seen the final paperwork to make that official, but that money is still in the pot. The original applicants to that will have right of first refusal. Remember, this all started 2 years ago. So I'm suspecting a great number of those have completely forgotten they ever applied for it. They've lost interest in doing the work. If they don't want the money, then we will probably make that money available to people in the Black Forest Monument area with kind of a objective committee that isn't me doling out the money to my buddies, who will kind of accept many applications for that money and decide how to disperse it to new projects. So although it's in the works, it hasn't been done yet. And I'm really hoping that soon we'll have all the paperwork and all the rigmarole completed that's been necessary to get that money into the hands of the landowners. So I'll leave it at that.
Dave, I'd ask, I'm not asking for advance notice, that would not be right or fair or probably legal, but when you make the public announcement about that, if you just let us know via email. Sometimes we just don't see or hear about those notices, and we want to be able to
Sure, it's hard to get them to everyone, and typically I'll send out notification to all the fire departments, to all the Firewise communities, cities, municipalities, but boy, it is hard to find Joe landowner kind of sitting out there by himself and getting the word to him. So if you are interested, don't ever hesitate to call me and say, hey, is anything coming up?
Okay, will do. All right, any other questions for Dave before we go?
Yeah, Jim has one about the liability as far as using the chipper.
I'm not sure. Could you elaborate on that? Is who's chipper or who's doing the work?
I think, he was asking what the liability, I was asking what the liability was a concern. I think, some folks, I've heard it from a couple of different avenues. One, for a homeowners association similar to the NEPCO, if someone gets hurt during a community chipping day, they're concerned that the individual will sue that neighborhood organization. I've also heard that from a personal perspective, if a person gets hurt on a certain homeowner's property there, and it's not that person, not the homeowner, but a person that is with the chipping day, some homeowners are concerned about the person who got hurt suing the person whose property was being worked on that day as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in module 7. I received a question from Smita about that, and we generally like to make sure that we put out for our chipping days that the liability risk is on the individual participant there. We have a waiver of liability form that we request everyone sign here. And then for you guys that are in homeowner associations and neighborhood efforts, we recommend that you do so. It's once again, nothing prevents a person from suing you, but if you have some evidence that shows that the person was aware of the risk and they still participated and then they were injured with it, then the person assumed the risk during that particular effort. And the waivers that we puts forth that the person would not sue the persons that are receiving the mitigation support or the homeowners association along the way. But if you're really concerned about all of that, I would consult a lawyer in that process. And there are lawyers who focus on homeowners associations in their work. So those are the types of lawyers that I would recommend. When I was on the board, we had one that we went to, and I can't remember the gentleman's name here, but he was one that worked directly on behalf of the Kiowa here in Colorado. And he was a specialist in that area, and he helped us tremendously because we got sued for a different reason here, and he was very helpful to us, and the mitigation stuff fits into that. So we'll provide a template. We'll show you what we're using for ours to the group here. I think Fire Adapted, Lisa, you can keep me straight on this one, has a template as well for consideration. So there are many out there. You just say, take the ones that we're providing. And if you want to have someone, you have a friend in the legal business to take a look at it and see if that is better suited for your neighborhood and go with that. Feel free to put your name all over it.
I think that's an excellent answer. That's probably much better than anything I could have come up with.
Oh, and I forgot also, my neighborhood also got an insurance policy for the liability aspect for chipping days, and it turned out to be not very expensive, in the big scheme of things. So for those formed homeowners associations, there are insurance companies that do provide these types of insurance policies, and they're not ones to break your arm and leg. That was the biggest concern for our chipping day, and we, the folks on our board took care of that, and we've been doing that for 8-9 years now with that policy. Okay, let's see a couple other comments here. I think this is from Beth Longquist. Our HOA was able to get a workman's comp policy for the HOA. CAIS is the parent company. March McDonald is our agent, or Mark McDonald. And then Matthew comment, anybody can be sued for anything at any time. You betcha. America. Reasonable precautionary measures make successful lawsuit unlikely. Please do not be afraid to pursue funding. My HOA is running the grant the NEPCO was going to run. No additional liability coverage was required. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dave? And while we have Jamie on board also potentially for Jamie as well. Okay. Well, thank you both Dave and Jamie for your contributions tonight. You guys are great partners. You provide great information to us every single time, and in every preparedness forum I see you in. We really look forward to keep working with you here, and then hopefully we have some of our folks in the local area meet with you, and then those in your district, Dave, to talk with you as well. At this point, we're gonna allow Jamie to return to his vacation here along the way, but if you need to be put into touch with Jamie or Dave, we can certainly do that for you here along the way. And then for those folks outside of Jamie's district here, I encourage you to connect with your fire professional, and if it's not Dave, his counterpart in his area. So with that, Jamie, thank you so much for being with us here, and you're cleared to drop. Have a great vacation.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
All right. All right, Dave's going to stick around with us for the remainder of the session here, and I'll go through the rest of the slides here. I'll try to keep it tight here. I know we have we're running close to our time here, but in talking about the neighborhood assessment, why should you or your neighborhood do an assessment? To me, you're looking for something that gives you that neighborhood, whole of neighborhood analysis. As you can see on the slide, it defines that community for you. It gives you, that overview look, but every community is unique. So it provides that unique aspect of the community here. And then one thing that Dave recommended, that when we look at the defines the community part here, is that you look at the list of values at risk to wildfire. So those unique aspects that make up your community, you want to define those, and those are the things that make your community a community. So include those aspects within your analysis. It also identifies hazards, topography, the density of fuels, the construction materials here. So it gives the impression or the understanding of how hazardous the situation is inside your neighborhood, or actually beneficial. It recognizes existing plans. There are plans that are out there, and the connections to them. Sometimes you'll see where a smaller area plan will identify or mention information from larger plans like the county community wildfire protection plan. So look for those as well. So it'll help you with the hazards, especially when you're working that. And then identifies resources. What's in your neighborhood? Ed Hurley told us that they're looking at building a cistern in their area in Black Forest, Cathedral Pines, or I can't remember if that's the right neighborhood, but had a large cistern in there. In a place that doesn't have fire hydrants around, that's a big deal. And you want the firefighters to know it, have it well marked in their maps here, and understand how far it is away. So look at those resources, and then preparedness considerations. What are the evacuations and communications involved in that? So it gives this whole neighborhood assessment, gives you that thorough analysis. What else does it provide? It also, now that you talked about the composition of your neighborhood, now it brings forth a plan of action here. So it gives you focus areas on where the community wants to work. It looks at your resource requirements. You have some resources that you have available to you, but what's the gap in the resources that you need for your particular efforts? Evacuation. I know this is a big one for John. And I think it should be all for all of us, honestly. Evacuation shortfalls and preparedness requirements. The pace of efforts. You can't do everything all at once. So in your priorities, some things take longer time period than others. So you'll in your plan want to understand what's the art of the possible for your particular community, and then look at that pace going forward. And then how you're going to communicate with your residents. Everybody communicates differently. We kind of talked about that a lot in module 1, but you want to include that as part of your plan. And then what coordination are you going to do with external agencies or groups? I think that's where the real strength for us going forward is what can we do, sort of like Dave was talking about, and working it not just as an individual neighborhood, but just working that as a whole of area type of a plan. So the different tools and resources we have that we're going to talk about in this program, there are many out there, but we know that there are different levels of effort involved in conducting a community assessment, and some folks just want to get started. So, and then others want a little bit more detail in their plans, and some want as much detail as they can get, and they want to go out there and compete for things like grants like Dave was talking about. So you need to proceed with the more detailed plan here. So we'll cover each one of these areas here: basic, the detailed, and intermediate. I don't want to say intermediate. It's a pretty good plan, that fire adapted community self-assessment tool, but not quite at the level of what you see with the community wildfire protection plan. But the key enhancer for each one of these types of plans is your interface with the fire or forestry professional to give you advice in these particular areas. So that tour with the fire and forestry professional, I like to push it because it helps promote a relationship with them. They get to know you, you get to know them. They understand your strengths and weaknesses. They in our tour for my subdivision, we were able to find an area that had a big wide open space, and this was during Jamie's predecessor's time, but from his perspective, that was an area to be identified as a staging area for response in case needed. And then some areas, we had another property that they identified in close proximity that could be used as a helo drop area too. So to bring in supplies and drop firefighters into what they perceived would be a very defensible, safe area to start with and then move out. And then as Dave was talking about, during that interface, you may hear about grants, which you can use to fund your risk reduction areas or efforts and projects. And then I'd bring along multiple people to participate in the trip with that fire and forestry professional, especially those persons that are not so much believers in the mitigation piece, so they can have that one-on-one. Not hear it from you, but hear it from the professional. So we're going to go into the 3 different types, and the first we'll start is the basic, the community wildfire risk assessment. The strength for that assessment is that it's short, it's abbreviated, 5 pages. If you're looking to get the basics out of it, you can get that with this form. And you can use that for lower fire danger areas, and it can be used for your FireWise program recognition. So it's a good plan to start off with, and of course it's free. That's a good benefit. Concerns, it's less comprehensive, and then those other assessment templates, it doesn't provide the level of detail that some and the depth of analysis that you would get out of some of the other ones. And it may not be suitable for some grant program submissions. So if you're really interested in the monetary or financial support aspect here, I would consult with Dave to see, will this be suitable for submission for a grant. Some grants, it will work just fine. Some may not. So they're all different. They're not all one size catches all. So in terms of the template here, it does give you some instructions at the beginning here, shows you the purpose, who it works out for, gives you the information that you'll need for that particular assessment, and then directions on how to accomplish it here going forward. And pretty simple format here, just fill in the boxes. This is a Microsoft Word document. I'm showing you something that I scanned here, but the boxes can expand if you want to put additional information inside each one of those sections along the way. Um, excuse me. So you can put in your location map as however you would like to determine it, but all the areas that we talked about before here are included in that particular block. So take a look at all of those here, and we're talking about your neighborhood in aggregate, not a house by house addition to this. You can make it really long if you start to go into that for this particular assessment. And then you get into a plan of action here to designate, and here's some ideas about what you could do for your plan of action, and then getting your plan reviewed. So regardless of the size of the plan here, I certainly would recommend that you consult with fire or forestry. And then also when Jamie mentioned the law enforcement folks for the evacuation aspect of your plan. The detailed or intermediate type tool in comparison with the three is the Fire Adapted Community Self-Assessment Tool, or the FACSAT. You can see the link to that particular tool. And then for those who did not receive the email for the reminder for this particular meeting, let me know. I'll forward you the previous document, and we have a PDF version of the FACSAT, but you can download it from the website here. The other one, the first one was one that was locally developed, so that I've not seen that on a particular website so far. So for the FACSAT, the strengths comprehensive, there are a lot of different considerations with it. I think most of those sections can be filled by the local neighborhood group here. You will definitely be able to categorize your risk and priorities based on that information. And I think it'll be helpful to get you support for most grant requests. It is definitely free, and it's right on their website. It does take, in terms of concerns, a little bit longer to fill out. It's 34 pages in length, and then you may have to spend more time in consulting with fire and forestry professionals, but I think it's well worth the time to take a look at this form. It gives you, here's what it looks like in terms of the cover and the table of contents. It has a section on wildfire hazards and risk, mitigation plans and resources, and public engagement and partnerships in that that second step, and then allows you to move into prioritizing your fire adaptation needs and creating your actions here. So the way it looks here with the section, you line up your risks. It gives you the header for you or the subject for that particular area, and then an area on the right that you fill in. And then the cool thing is it gives you very different categories based on the answers that you put into the section on the right, a description of your relative, I guess, capabilities or a rating for that particular area here: very high, high, medium, low, and very low. And once you go through all the sections within that particular plan, it allows you to then prioritize your fire adaptation needs here. And then you bring basically that rating in that you saw from the previous sections here, and then look at your trending here, which I think is cool, you know, to consider. Are you maintaining, improving, or declining in that particular area? And then allows you to determine your prioritization here. And that's something that you have to do. It's very subjective. And then the last piece is creating a community fire adaptation action plan. So you bring in your priority areas here, and then determine actions that you can use to address those particular concerns. And then, of course, the cool stuff, who's going to take care of this? And I wouldn't say you necessarily need to do that by individual. You're more like, hey, who's the leader of that for that particular effort inside your neighborhood? So more of a consideration on who's leading the effort inside your neighborhood for that particular aspect. Maybe the person that's assessing progress in your neighborhood. So food for thought there. So like I said, you know, it's 34 pages in length. I kind of broke out the sections that you see here in the different major steps along the way. And then the last one is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. The getting this, it's legally authorized. Dave, keep me straight on the cost here on the next slide here, but I'll come to that in a second. Strengths is very comprehensive, covers the neighborhood, history, topography, local resources. I saw, and to give relation to what Dave was talking about the UPass and the hazard there, the UPass CWPP shows a picture from about, if I remember right, like 120 years ago, and what it looked like in that area, and then a picture in the early 2000s from the very same area and what it looks like currently, and a dramatic difference. So it gives you the history and topography as you're able to gather it. Of course, the neighborhood is doing this. Many of the aspects are in narrative form here. You'll see diagrams, pictures. Some aspects you'll see a very detailed evacuation plan in it. So I've seen that in many of them. It also includes your detailed multi-year action plan, and it can be used for grants. And they're publicly available from other neighborhoods to use as an example. And I'll escape out of here in a second here to show you for all the counties here. But as far as the concerns with a CWPP, this is not something that you're going to do in a couple of weeks. It's going to take some time, and you need to get a committee together to do this. If it's one person, it's going to give them a lot of burden. So it will get reviewed by a forestry professional, and you need to get that done. I don't know if that's a concern. I think that's also a strength. But Dave, what is the cost to get a CWPP processed with you guys right now?
It depends. And for those of you with contacts in different field offices, there's usually some latitude among our field offices for how you make the charges. Technically, it's supposed to be $74 per hour for our time, but I'll usually make just a lump sum cost. For a Firewise community assessment, probably between $500 and $1,000, you know, depending on the complexity. Yeah, for a CWPP, probably anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. If you were to look at, and I just snipped the one for El Paso, and this is what the page sort of looks like here. This is just one county in the list, but it'll show you each one that the Forest Service has approved and coordinate on, and all of these are hyperlinks to that particular neighborhood CWPP. So recommend that you take a look at the website for your county. I've seen, or I'm sorry, the Forest Service website and your county within that listing to see which ones are on there. And I saw quite a few, if I remember right, for each one of the neighborhoods that are in this program here. So in terms of a CWPP, I pulled on a few aspects from the Woodmore CWPP. You'll notice that when they built this, they had a lot of folks that participated. So you've got the committee members, community contributors, and then the board and who works on the updates. Notice a couple of familiar names here, right? Dave Root and Jamie Baumgartner. In terms of table of contents here, you guys will see that with the slides here, but lots of different areas under consideration. So you're looking at a very thorough analysis of your particular neighborhood. I mentioned that there are aspects that provide figures and a narrative description for it here. So that's fairly typical for all CWPPs. So after that's all completed and drafted, you give it to your professionals for review for each one of those types of assessments. And you'll probably get a lot of good questions and suggestions on how to improve or aspects to include within your neighborhood assessment. Let's see. And then, so in terms of those, the homeowner assessment, I'd like to open that up to questions before we go into the homework. Let's see. All right, from Bonnie, the grant Dave referred to, how much does an HOA have for the match and how much is a chipper? I can answer the latter part real quick. The chipper rental, at least here in the Colorado Springs area, we normally work with Bill's Tool Rental, and it's about $475, $480 for a full day rental, and that includes the fuel. Dave, in terms of the other part of her question, how much does an HOA have to have for a match for the grant that you discussed earlier?
You know, it varies with the particular grant program. For the one that's coming up, probably you'll have to have a one-to-one match. In other words, for every dollar reimbursed, you would have to spend $1. Or the homeowner can also be reimbursed for the time they put into the grant or put into the work if they do it themselves. And off the top of my head, I cannot recall the hourly figure. I think it's around $28. But it varies with the grant program.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right, that's all I see in the chat. Are there any other questions from the group that you'd like to bring up? Cherise, that's a great picture. That's awesome. Okay, not seeing or hearing anymore. Let's go into the homework for this particular module. And what we'd like you to do is schedule a tour with your fire or forestry professional. If you've already done that, I'm not wanting you to do it all over again. Just let us know when you conducted that tour. And we're looking for something relatively, recent, like within the last year, preferably the last, 6 months or so. But we don't want you to do it again just for sake of this program. For neighborhoods without an assessment, we'd like you to determine an initial meeting date for that FireWise team to start development of that assessment. So we're looking for an initial meeting date to get the process going. I know once you get the folks together, things will start to happen afterward, but quite often the first step is getting the team together to forming the team and then getting the start date to get things rolling. And then for neighborhoods with an existing assessment, I want you to determine the 3 highest priority unaddressed areas for action in 2021. We know that many CWPPs have languished over time, especially the ones that have been around for quite a bit. And some of the areas that were identified as priorities a long time ago haven't been addressed. So we're looking for the 3 highest priority areas, unaddressed areas for action in 2021. Okay, I think, we're running a little over tonight here, but I'd like to see if there are any last questions before we go. let's see, Ed. Bentry is hundreds of lots and nearly 500 acres. By scheduling a tour, do you mean the tour of such a huge area? My subdivision is not as big as yours here, but when we did our tour, we basically just did a drive around. And so we, I think it was myself and then the vice president of the homeowners association met the fire marshal at our house, and we did a drive around tour. And then we, just from the road perspective, and we took a look at houses and we asked, questions along the way. Hey, what are your concerns with this particular street, this type of house, this entryway into this driveway, those types of things. So I think you can do it all from your car. You don't have to go tromping, through all the different properties, but you're just trying to get the impression of what are the major concerns from that particular person. Just like Jamie said, he's going to tell you from his perspective, what are his concerns through the firefighters lens along the way. So that's what I would do with and I know some, like for our Bailey friends, that you might need a 4-wheel drive to do that particular tour, but I think you can do it from your vehicle. Yeah, any other questions? Okay, from Lucy, do you and Lisa want us to send our homework results to you or just let you know we are getting it done? Please send it to us. We want to see the details of it here along the way, because we're going to be comparing to the other groups here to see, who's done the most work with it in those particular areas. And if everybody's knocking it out of the park, there may be some aspects that we would consider tiebreakers along the way here. So yeah, send us the details of what you're doing. You don't have to write a novel. We're just kind of looking for, the particular actions that you're doing with it. Other questions? Okay, so next week we're going to start getting into the process of planning for your chipping day, and we're going to start big here along the way, and then work down, do a couple of different sessions, but major large scale considerations first, smaller details, and then the third week, if I recall, we'll have our vegetation discussion. So I'm pretty excited to have that session going forward. I know we talk a lot about what we should get rid of, but I think we also want to bring in, hey, what's good to bring in versus just taking stuff out here. And so we want to have beautiful neighborhoods as well as fire adapted ones here too. So we'll have good discussion with that. But next week we'll start getting into the details about talking about a chipping day or a chipping project going forward here. It's not the only way to do business here, but it's the one that we think can cover the most in your neighborhood and help more properties along the way, because it's hard to find slash mulch areas where you can, drop off, and there's a lot of labor involved with that. So this is our technique. There are others out there, but we see that this works well from both a fuels reduction perspective, and then also it's cool to get people together, and it allows you to be with each other that day and work together. So that's why we kind of like to promote this particular method. All right, Lisa, before we go, anything I'm missing that we need to cover?
No, we'll get to it later.
Okay, I am still working on the video from last week here. I gotta still do some editing for that. I just haven't had the time to work on it as much. I do appreciate Jim carrying around my phone for the first hour there to do that. I kind of sprung that on him at the last second, so I appreciate Jim you taking that on, and I'm sure it's fine. I just haven't had the time over the last week to be able to take a look at that video and refine it for folks to get to the basic meat of what we're doing here with that. Okay, I think that's all I have here. I think, yep. Okay, so we're back on schedule, folks, here. So next meeting will be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. here, same link, same bat time, same bat channel, as some of us would have heard way long time ago. So that concludes tonight's session, and I hope you have a great night. If you have any questions that I haven't answered here, that you need answered, please, send me another email to put it back at the top of my email container. I'm still playing catch up with that. So I apologize if I missed any from you. I'm just trying to go through those to get through them. I think I'm okay right now, but if you need any questions or you have any questions, feel free to ask in email. I'm happy to connect folks here in the group too, and then we'll continue working the aspects of getting some sort of community forum going forward here. All right. So with that, that concludes our session. Have a good night. Thank you for all your questions today. And then once again, thanks to Dave for being on tonight, and to Jamie for their contributions to tonight's session. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Lisa, do you need
Everybody's
to go?
asking. No, I'm good, but I knew we better not add any more on there. But everybody's asking such good questions. It's really great.
I know.
And, oh, there's Dave. So I don't know if you saw the email, Andre, but Dave, I looked at Dave the other day and I said, I know you from the Air Force Academy, don't I? And he said, yep. And that we from 1990 when Mark was first teaching there. DFEG.
I was wondering which lyrics you remembered.
Mostly just DFEG.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was a long time ago, but then he came up with the other one. So the one you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have any questions. I'm juggling different things. I just forgot to sign off. But thank you guys for doing all this.
But Dave,
yeah.
I wanted to. So Dave, he really is a, he's mentioned it already, disaster chainsaw guy. So I wanna introduce him to Byron also, because that find more ways to take use of that great skill that you got there and willingness to use it. So I'll help you get connected with another group too.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. You too. And thanks. The 3 levels of the wildfire plans was good. I went online and copied a bunch of those down to use. So thanks for giving us that information.
Oh, good. I'm glad I think it'll be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah. It gets intimidating if somebody sees just CWPP. So I'm like,
well, we've been dealing with a couple of groups, and I've learned to ask, do they have a CWPP? But I didn't realize, if they have one of these other 2 things, it's probably going to be sufficient for them to work with us. It may not allow them to do grants, but it means they've got some good planning ahead. So that was a key insight for me tonight, was I shouldn't just ask, because I've heard several times, no, we don't have one. And I said, well, do you have one of these other things? Would be my next question. So thank you.
Yep.
That's great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
And Kim made it back after her power went out, so that's good.
Yeah, I just saw her coming back in. I may have.
Yeah, sorry about that.
When she came back in.
You predicted it was going to happen, and then it did. So
it's a very wet, sticky snow. We have underground power here, but further south is where, if something goes out there, we get hit. So, but we're back. So I guess I can sign off now.
All right.
Okay.
So thank you guys.
It'll be recorded, so you'll be able to see it.
That's great. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, but man, everybody's having such good questions. That was great. And I don't know what took so long. I mean, I don't know. It felt like it was moving along, and then it was like, oh no. But
I was watching the time, and that's why I didn't put a lot of detail into the wildfire assessment parts. I had a sinking feeling that that we would go long with those. And I think that was a unique opportunity, so I didn't want to short them on that time. And, you know,
And those
Dave
are the
always
s-
runs a little
those-
long too.
Yeah, no, but those forms are just, it's kind of like the other form. You know, we did spend 2 whole nights on the other form, but those forms, you really have to sit and read them and look at them and look at your neighborhood. And so hopefully they'll pick one and just start looking at it. And you emailed those out today to everybody. So,
They have them.
Yeah.
And the link to the CWPP, here, they can go and take a look at that and everyone in their neighborhood. So, and some that are concerned about evacuation, there are evacuation plans that they have. It's more about training of the people, I
Mhm.
think, that is interesting here. So we'll see how that works out going forward. Robin said that they don't have a any training involved from in the county for evacuation. The people that were at the city that worked the evacuation preparation have moved on to different jobs, so that continuity, that corporate memory is gone. And also when they combine between the city and the county, you know, people change jobs, and that information just from the city side has fallen off quite a bit. Yeah, at one point the city was the powerhouse OEM, and the county had just a couple of folks. And over time they've gone in opposite directions here. Not that the city is bad by any means, they still have solid folks here, but they've had a lot of changeover over time, whereas the county has been building up in staff along the way. And so I was just hoping that I could pick some of that information up from them, because this was over by UCCS in around it's about 5 years ago. We were looking to try to get them to focus in certain areas, and they said, we're developing wildfire. We have to do a wildfire evacuation exercise. They had I think it was to keep one of their certifications here. So they had to switch over from doing flash flooding over to wildfire for to maintain that certification. And they focused in around the wooded areas around UCCS. And so, but no one has that information now. So I think it went well tonight. We flowed, I think, pretty well, and then my mute button issues here and dragging something across the screen at the beginning here. I realized that when I displayed things that I didn't have them quite right, and I wanted to be able to see the room control piece here, and I couldn't see it before, so I had to shift some things around.
No, I thought everything went
3
as
weeks or so.
smoothly as it could. And I was actually kind of surprised Jamie stuck around for all of it like that. I thought he would go ahead and bug out early, but when you guys talked at the beginning, and it was like, oh, okay. So I'm glad he did that. And when I talked to Chief Kovacs today briefly, I mentioned to him that Jamie's calling in from vacation to help us with our meeting tonight, so he got bonus points from today.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, anytime you can help.
We didn't decide anything, but I wanted to say to him, I've seen you before on the Zoom meeting in January, but you were too busy to notice because that was your first meeting of any kind with our districts. And then I told him that we had this question, and he was just glad to get filled in. Oh, and the way I said it was, we're trying to figure out what to do because we want to participate on May 8th, but we have something else going on that day. And I want to tell you what it is, because normally people don't care what your excuse is, but I'm like, no, this is a good reason that we have it. So we're working. And so I described the general idea of the chipping demonstration and that we were discussing what to do.
Yeah. Initially, I wanted to use Jamie's chipper, with that. But if they're doing something out
Well,
and doing their strategic planning, all the people that would help us with that, well, I'll say all of them, significant folks may not be available to do that. So I know we have the
Yeah.
Doug.
the
that
Doug
offered up-
volunteered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he may become the option. It's a matter of then, where do we conduct the session? So I'm sure that they're going to do their meeting at, well, I don't want to presuppose, but no, they said it was Monument Town Hall, didn't they?
Chamber of Commerce, not to Town Hall, in the Chamber of Commerce building that used to be the Town Hall.
Yeah. So to get to your email question, I didn't actually have planned to have John Rickman involved. I had talked to Larry Ferris about that,
Oh,
and
okay.
he said he wanted to become more involved with this, but I need to start getting to have that discussion with them, as we're about a month out here, and
Yeah.
then
Oh,
make
good.
sure
Okay.
that it's on their calendar here, and then tell them what I'm looking to do for their portion of it. And I'm thinking mostly just to talk about the operation of the chipper and then the safety gear. And then, leave that aspect. The other parts about the chipper, when I say chipper leader training, I'm talking about the chipping day itself and all of those additional considerations that person needs to have. So I plan on talking about that aspect, in the training going forward. But I wanted to have someone else to talk about the actual chipper itself. Now,
Okay, yeah. Now with Larry, I gotta specifically call out Larry, as far as safety gear. I was really disappointed in Larry with the safety gear, he had cadets on his property, nobody's wearing ear protection, nobody's wearing a mask, and I was the one going, yeah, and oh,
all right, so maybe we get them to tag team it, and then we ask John to talk about the safety gear portion of it, and then Larry to talk about the operation of the chipper itself.
Yeah, I would love for someone else to talk about PPE than Larry. Yeah.
Okay.
And then John too, it's like, I know he's super busy, but I don't want him to fade away. And that would be a nice, small, contained task that we could ask him to help with.
Yeah, but his schedule is, I'm cognizant of that too. Here, and
I don't know what, yeah.
the last year of work kind of did a number on his body, so I'm aware of that as well.
He's just got such a nice speaking voice, and it'd be much better if he did it than me, for example.
Yeah. Oh, sure. So yeah, I'll ask them to do that part and tag team it, and have John talk about the PPE bit. I need to go back through the outline for that particular session anyway. Do you know what the requirements are for us for Jamie's preparedness event?
No.
All right. I think we should understand that, for that particular day here. We have a little bit of time.
Did I forward you the one email? Yeah, that he sent. I got from that one email he sent, which was still a draft, not to be distributed to the whole world. It said, it sounded like we were going to have a booth. So I also forwarded that to Robin, and I said, can you want to come up with a booth for CERT? And because she had volunteered to get CERT to come on our May 1. And then, so
Right.
she said, great, I'll change the date. And I bet we'll talk about that on Thursday night, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess a good time to bring that up.
Yeah, but no, I think it's just more of a booth, but I don't know what